Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce you to one of our colleagues from beautiful New Zealand, New Zealand Neurology Association, and the Professor Anna Ranta is a known colleague for us. But I thought that for the other 125 member societies worldwide, it is good to get to know who is doing what and what's happening in different parts of the world. Anna, I know it is afternoon for you. Very good afternoon. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
You are basically the delegate for New Zealand Neurology Association, which is a valued member of World Federation Neurology. As you are aware, World Federation Neurology has really the grown from strength to strength. With now we have a thing called Global Neurological Alliance, where almost all other subspecialty global societies are united in collaboration with World Federation Neurology, basically wanting to provide quality neurological care worldwide and fostering brain health worldwide, irrespective of color, irrespective of race, irrespective of the language, globally. So first question, tell our viewers who you are and where you are, and how did you become Professor Anna Ranta from your formative days to now?
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm a professor of neurology. I specialize in stroke neurology, and I work in Wellington, New Zealand, which is the capital of New Zealand, at the Wellington Hospital and University of Otago, Wellington. So I'm actually the head of Department of Medicine in the department in the University of Otago, Wellington. And so I have a group of people working on stroke research. I'm actually originally from Germany, and I moved to the States when I was an older teenager with my family, and I studied in the States, became a neurologist there. So I've been in New Zealand for 15 years, and for Wellington about half that time. So that's me.
That's you. Anna, my next question, why medicine, why neurology? What sparked you to pick up neurology? And then I'll come back to stroke as the next question. What was the sort of inspiring thing that you moved away from other subspecialties in medicine to neurology? Although you just told us that you are chair medicine or the head medicine, that means you are doing the nitty-gritty things and integrally interconnected with medicine also. So it's not all away. But why you did choose neurology? What was the spark?
Well, I actually studied philosophy when I was an undergraduate student, and I had an interest in doing a graduate degree in philosophy, and then I decided to go into medical school. And so I was always interested in the brain, really. And I, for a while, considered neurosurgery, but at the time, that wasn't really something women did. And so I became a physician instead. And I love neurology because I am a very logical thinker, and I like neurological localization, which is sort of one little pet peeve I teach my students all about.
You had a sort of the world round trip. You were born in Germany, grew up in US, finished off neurology training in US, and then you came to New Zealand. When you came to New Zealand from USA to establish yourself as an academic neurologist, were there challenges that you had to face? If so, how did you overcome them?
Well, actually, when I finished, I did an epilepsy fellowship in the University of Virginia where I trained, and I had my first child. And so I actually went into private practice, and I came to New Zealand just as a locum for a year, and we didn't plan to stay. And that was when I had my second child. So that was just after I had some maternity leave in private practice in America. That wasn't an option to kind of just take leave for a while. So I had to quit my job. And when I came to New Zealand, I was in Palmerston North, which is a small, sort of a mid-sized town in regional New Zealand as a locum. It was my two small children and my husband who was taking care of the kids. And so I was just a hospital physician at the time. I'd given up doing academic neurology. I always wanted to be an academic, absolutely. But I stopped that pursuit because of my children. And it really wasn't something that was very feasible as a young mother to do both, who was also the main breadwinner for the family. So I didn't I just started as a hospital neurologist, and I got very interested in equity issues around regional disparities. I found that the medical care provided at the smaller hospitals was actually pretty good, but there was just serious access issues for really specialized care, and that had me really worried around. And then I started the first stroke unit there. They didn't have a stroke unit. They'd never given thrombolysis. This was in 2007. And so there was the greatest need was actually in acute stroke care, which nobody was running at that hospital. And that's how I got started in stroke medicine, shifted from epilepsy. I was really a general neurologist at that time. I still did a lot of EEG and epilepsy care. I still do some of that. But yeah, so I started developing service changes, including a TIA tool to help better triage of patients in these areas where there weren't enough specialists. Basically, I was the only neurologist in that area, and then I had this tool, and I wanted to assess whether it was useful, and I applied for a grant, and I did a cluster randomized controlled trial, and that's really how I started becoming an academic. And then I joined the university, and that's when I moved to Wellington, which gave me more opportunities.
I'm going to spend some time here, and you probably don't know, I have probably even more complex background than you, and I had a gig at Palmerston North Hospital as a young resident a few years before, and I was determined to do neurology at that time, but there was no neurologist at Palmerston North Hospital. There was a technician who was doing EMGs, and I used to sit with him regularly. I had the good fortune of knowing a fantastic guy called Dr. Richard Deverts, who I believe is an infectious disease consultant at Nelson now. A brilliant, one of the most amazing human beings that one would ever met. He sort of persuaded me to push on with physician training and rest of the other things. I remember vividly, around 2001 or 2000, there were sort of general medicine handover meetings at Palmerston North Hospital. It's a beautiful city, by the way. My son was born there, and we thoroughly enjoyed our gig at Palmerston North. You agree? The Hokitika River and all those sort of sightings in the small city. And I presented a 5-minute gig on stroke thrombolysis and why we needed to do this. You wouldn't believe, I was punished for this by the director of medicine at that time. Basically, the having a sort of a one-on-one meeting saying that when there were so many other useful topics to choose, choosing something bizarre like stroke thrombolysis that was never going to happen in a place like Palmerston North, and wasting rest of the other general physicians and the trainees' time. But you, the changing few things, few years ahead, I am sure you would have faced an enormous amount of challenges. I can't imagine a solo neurologist trying to pull out a cluster randomized trial from Palmerston North while she is the breadwinner of the family with the young children also. So for the benefit of all other potential movers and shakers, wherever they are in the world, tell us how you proceeded with those challenges and still got the job done. What was your secret?
Well, I think basically trying to do what I thought was most impactful for the population at the time was just a really strong driver, really. And I think having the support from my husband, who took care of the children. So I don't think this would have been really possible when, having really small children without his help. So he sacrificed a lot. And I think that, one thing about New Zealand is that it's very collegial environment, I think, and I did have support from other neurologists around New Zealand, like John Fink and Alan Barber were quite supportive of me doing something, even though I was in Palmerston North. And I don't know. I think I just was determined to do it, and it seemed like a really important thing to do, and it seemed like a rewarding thing to do. And I took some time off, and I didn't have I had the grant, but I didn't have that much funding support to pay my salary while I did my PhD. I did a PhD basically at that time, so I took a huge pay cut, and we just kind of managed. So I don't know what secret I have other than just being stubborn and wanting to do it and it being enjoyable. And I just love research and service improvement. And so I think I just found my calling, I think I just found what I was passionate about. I wanted to do something that was meaningful. I wanted to do high quality science, which there aren't that many people in New Zealand, certainly not in neurology, who do randomized controlled trials. And we do, obviously, like everyone else does, international studies. But I think this is, in fact, something that's continued to be a passion of mine, is to drive New Zealand initiated research and trying to build PhD students. We have a bit of this habit of farming our students out internationally to do PhDs elsewhere, and we have a lot of attrition. And I'm trying, as president of NAMS, I'm trying to currently increase, people wanting to do research in New Zealand, doing the same kind of thing. And I think probably the biggest challenge was I had so many people telling me I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, you're in Palmerston North, there's no way you can do it. Oh, you'll never get an HRC grant, which is like our NHMRC grant or NIH grant equivalent. And I applied and I was like, no way will you get this grant. And I did on my first go. And so I think that's always the challenge, and of course being a woman has had its own hardships, and having a foreign accent hasn't always helped. So it's those kinds of things. And so I think maybe having moved from 3 continents in my lifetime, I've just kind of learned to ignore some of these people who say, no, it cannot be done, and just believing that if I want to do it badly enough, I can do it. And if I'm willing to not have, doctor's salary for a couple of years, that's fine. I don't need a lot. So I think determination, resilience.
I agree. I think the determination and making the right connections and getting on with the job that you are passionate about and recognizing your calling are key things. Of course, we both know that how terrific human beings both Alan Barb and John Fink are. I remember vividly when I did a significant chunk of my training in Christchurch Hospital. John just came back from USA and we established a thrombolysis program there. And I remember vividly. Now I work very closely with Stephen Davis and Jeff Donnan, and for Steve's epithet trial, I basically ran daily on call, despite my son was only a few months old and my wife was trying to tackle through psychiatry training in Christchurch at that time. I was basically 24/7 on call for a few years for epithet trial. But they were terrific people. I learned heaps of general neurology from great people like Phil Parkin, Tim Anderson, whom I still adore and the hold very high in my heart. They have visited my place in Melbourne also a couple of times, pre-COVID time, of course. And then you make a move to Wellington, and the establishing as an academic career. What are the most rewarding aspects of combining the academic and the clinician scientist bits and continue to promote younger folks to pick up higher degrees within New Zealand? What aspects do you enjoy most?
I would say what I enjoy most is the variety of work I do. Like it just doesn't get boring. You can do clinical work, you can do some, I'm head of department, so I do some administrative work, and I really enjoy leading teams. And I think that's an opportunity you can do in research. And what I love about research more than anything else is it's so pure. You have an idea, you write a grant. I really like writing grants because it's the birth of the project. And then you get to put together your A team. You get to pick, I want a little bit of that health economist and that neurologist and that general physician and that nurse and that Maori researcher. I do a lot of Indigenous health research as well. And so handpicking a team of fantastic people and then putting that research into practice and then transitioning it into business as usual through appealing to the Ministry of Health. I do a lot of Ministry of Health. So I think the combination, and then still seeing patients, I think that's really important. I see some people move to pure research and you lose touch with the cold phase and you lose touch with why you're doing it. You need to stop. You need to always do it for the patients and not for your CV or your career or your department head. You remember always that's why you're doing it. And so you have this wonderful progression. The ideas come usually from working with patients and seeing a need, maybe some collaborations, networking. You build your project, you then see it implemented, and you see so many people benefit. So I think the variety, the huge impact you can have with research, and also the intellectual stimulus. And I think this is something that I'm striving to kind of bring people along. As doctors, I think we should all be engaging in advancement of our specialty. I think, sure, there's people who, work every day in clinic, and that's fine. But I think a substantial portion of us should be rising above that and asking questions and questioning the status quo, and really do system change rather than just, focusing on that one patient in front of you. So I find it very meaningful.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. I totally agree. And I always tell that if you wanted to be a great physician, irrespective of the specialty, you must embrace education and translational research to that. Recently, I was having a discussion with the president-elect World Stroke Organization, and I was just chatting with her that every time when I see a job advertisement that is coming through LinkedIn, all your social media channel, not that you're looking for a job, when you see the chair implementation science or chair implementation this, I always feel that we are the best implementation scientists around. We told the world how thrombolysis work. We implemented it in no time. We told the world how stroke units work. We implemented it in no time. And now we are grappling with the COVID-19 impact and long COVID that our group has redefined as post-COVID-19 neurological syndrome. We started to tell people how we deal with it. I think as neuroscience continue to advance, I have a feeling that we would touch some of those soft entities, yet important human entities such as love, kindness, compassion, how the sort of same country put Barack Obama-like guy as president, and then they changed their mind and put completely the opposite as the president in few years' time. What drives that sort of a human behavior? The vaccination issues that we talked about before the recording, that why would very decent, educated beings suddenly fixated with wrong idea? And all these things, brain is the way to go, and neuroscience is the way to go. By the way, the New Zealand always punched way above its waist historically. When you look through the books from Dusty Allen days to Ian MacDonald, recently as part of the World Brain Day campaign I chair globally, I was having a discussion or the video interview with a gentleman called Professor Austin Sumner. You probably have heard of him.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be coming back to Wellington, which never happened. Instead, he was hijacked by USA, where he established himself and did a lot of work. I would strongly encourage your trainees and potential aspiring neuroscientists and neurologists in New Zealand specifically to watch that interview. It was very candid. He was basically sharing his experience as an 18, 19-year-old young boy with an inquisitive mind, spending cold afternoons and night after night in Dunedin, basically working with a cat model, trying to unravel the mysteries behind why demyelination occur. The best answer that he gave me was when I asked from him, the Professor Sumner, were there times that you and Ian had time to go out and check out a pub or something other than this when you felt tired? His answer was that, what are you talking this? We never felt tired. We were super excited to see what's next on the experiment. Would it come through? Would it not come through? Would it be able to prove what Harvard guys have shown in this animal model, the enthusiasm? And now 40, 50 years later, or even a little bit more longer, we are now talking about stopping multiple sclerosis, potential of putting a full stop to that. That's the beauty of science and translation. Anna, I'm going to change the gear a little bit. As you know, the World Federation Neurology is very keen to foster neurology globally. What opportunities are there for resource-limited countries, potential trainees and fellows who might want to have a short-term gig in New Zealand once this COVID crisis is over? Are there mechanisms for overseas neurology trainees to apply for short-term or long-term fellowships? Are there potential funding opportunities, or do they have to come out with their own funding? What's the story in that area?
Right. So we have lots of international trainees in general, so not just in neurology, but so yes, you can apply for a training post, certainly if it is something that aligns with the training scheme here as far as timing. So for example, we have fellowship positions. So in Wellington, we have a stroke fellowship and a neurophysiology fellowship, and we do consider international applicants, and that's often a good opportunity if anyone also wanted to stay to join as a junior faculty. So those are 6 months or 1 year positions, and you can get work visas for those. You do need to, in order for you to practice in New Zealand, you do need to have a medical council registration, which you can get short-term registrations. It's not that difficult. It's harder to get a permanent registration. So there is a mechanism for that. That's just via the hospital, by each individual hospital. So you write to the hospitals, and those are funded positions. You get paid for the work. Shorter term experiences. So if you were to come as maybe a 4 or 6 week or a 2 month position, those would generally be unfunded. So you could do an observership, and we do also, again, we accept international people to just come along. That you cannot, without license, you cannot participate, you cannot lead active patient interactions. You become an honorary staff member, you shadow people, and depending on the experience, you may be more or less involved. You may be involved with some teaching, but we certainly offer these opportunities for people to shadow us. Again, that's through each individual unit. Around funding other people coming to New Zealand, around stipends for travel, we don't have anything in place for that from New Zealand. I do believe, though, so we work very closely with ANZAN, and ANZAN does have a fellowship, I believe, for overseas people to spend some time. There's one the other way, like I was going to go to Samoa and do some teaching there and some funding for that. So I do think there's some funding through ANZAN, and that could be used to come to New Zealand. Beyond that, there isn't anything in place, but if there was a strong interest from somebody to come, then through NANS, which is the Neurological Association of New Zealand, which is what I'm the president of, we would potentially be open to consider establishing something like that. The current focus of NANS is to invest in small stipends for research students here and Indigenous health. But we haven't, if there was interest, then I'd be interested to be contacted, and I'd be happy to consider it.
And just to remind viewers, the Australia and New Zealand has a very strong partnership. The main professional association goes as Australia and New Zealand Neurology Association. You probably wouldn't know the history behind this. I'll probably let you know. When I was the solo neurology advanced trainee in New Zealand years back, we had fabulous teachers, but we had very little opportunity to intermingle with others. Obviously, when you are the only trainee, there isn't anyone to intermingle with. So basically the gate crashed into one of the advanced trainee weekends that Perth had, I think 2003 or 2002, if I recall. Obviously, when I say gate crashed, I sought permission from the Australian, the neurology, the community, advanced trainee community, saying that would you be happy to take New Zealand advanced trainee also, but there's only one at the moment, and that's happened to be me. And they had a vote, and they voted 100% in favor, supporting us. And then I had the good fortune of attending various things, EEG course, EMG course, this and that. And then we started proposing that perhaps New Zealand neurology and Australian neurology should get together. And then when David Burke became president, this became a reality. Later on, when I checked with David, he said to me that they always felt that New Zealand and Australia could do things together, but they felt shy to ask that from New Zealand. And New Zealand always had a strong the relationship with then AAN, Australian Association of Neurologists, but they were shy to break ice the either. So the trainees to trainees communication basically broke that ice, and rest is history. But having said that, New Zealand is an independent country, of course, and New Zealand has a very strong academic neurology community, as you heard from Anna. And in our region, when I say our region, although I represent the globe here, because I practice neurology in Australia, and because I travel back and forth to Sri Lanka, where I originally come from quite often pre-COVID, I have a feeling that Asia-Oceania region, the Australian New Zealand, has a responsibility to support more and engage more. It has repercussions. Almost 60% of the world population live in this region. I think both Australia and New Zealand, they're doing great, but we can do more to support our neighborhood countries. Say, for an example, Indonesia has almost like 3,000 neurologists and the trainee positions. Then rest of the other countries around us, Bangladesh, Nepal, Vietnam. I am part of the NSAN committee that you mentioned. We have a small stipend to support them. I would personally like to see that we engage more in the region while we keep the global platform, and that would benefit us immensely also. You deal with indigenous health issues in New Zealand, and I do the same here. And there are genetic and the biochemical similarities between indigenous people in New Zealand and Australia and Southeast Asian people that has been well published. Therefore, collaborating with these countries might benefit both regions. So food for thought anyway, for us to see.
We have, I mean, I've been working very actively with Samoa. So my focus has been primarily the Pacific Islands rather than East Asia. But we are doing work with Fiji, with the Samoa, with Rarotonga. You know, we do outreach programs. So that's, yeah, and I agree. We should be, New Zealand should be doing more in that space. Yeah.
I mean, my point is there are great people, and what I learn having worked around World Federation Neurology for well over a decade now is I always tell this, that for all the problems that this world face, we have all the solutions right now. We have enough brain power around us globally. We just need to connect the dots and build networks and the promote things. By the time our time comes to leave this planet, we would leave a much better planet than where we began. And I'm delighted to see that the WFN certainly is moving along that direction beautifully, with strong networks with all the others. If you attend the World Congress this year, you would have seen that every session is a combined effort between two organizations. Epilepsy would be done by WFN and International League Against Epilepsy. Movement disorders would be done by WFN and Movement Disorders Society. Stroke would be done by WFN and World Stroke Organization. Headaches and migraine would be done by WFN and International Headache Society. And the WHO related activities would be done by WHO and WFN. So what more strength that you need? And when you visit some of the sessions, you can see the powerhouse knowledge that we have around the globe, different color, different accent, but common theme, fostering quality neurological care and promoting brain health. Anna, my last question. I know that you are happily married, and I know that you are on holiday and you are already in trouble for giving away this time. I have been there, done that, and I know the feeling exactly. It's a very common theme of many of us, but fortunately our partners are sticking with us for decade after decade. They probably know that we are good enough to stick with us. And tell us a little bit about your family life, and outside neurology, what do you do for joy?
Well, yes, I'm married to John, and we've been married for about 20 years. And I have two daughters, a 15-year-old Daphne and a 18-year-old Sarah. Sarah's going off to University of Otago in February to study medicine. So
Brilliant.
that's very exciting. And Daphne is an avid soccer player, and she wants to be a female world-class soccer player. So we'll see where that goes. She used to want to be a rocket scientist, which I thought was more exciting. But go girl power. So she's going to do soccer for a while. And yeah, so I really like cooking. And I like baking. I like making beautiful artisan breads, and I love that. I love baking. I like gardening. And I like those things because they create beauty and they're very creative. And I love the whole concept of baking because it transforms things, like a miracle when you get this beautiful bread out. And I find it very zen because then you eat it. And so you sort of it's a temporary pleasure that has to be enjoyed in the moment. And we do it as a family. So we all come together, we have a beautiful meal together, and then it's gone, and the moment is gone and only lives on in our memories. And I find that very much. I don't like creating waste. I don't like shopping. I don't like consuming lots of new things and building big houses and having lots of cars. I just like having the family together and doing things as a team. And we do a lot of traveling and hiking and being in the outdoors. So that's what I also play the violin with my husband. We play a lot of music together. And so those are my creative outside work joys.
Anna, you are certainly an asset to New Zealand, and having had a gig at Palmerston North as a very young junior doctor, I know how hard it is to do what you have done, but you've done them. Being a migrant myself, having an accent, I know how hard it is to progress things when you're not born in the same place, when you don't have a lot of friends and colleagues that you grew up together. But that hasn't stopped any one of us doing things that we wanted to do. And I'm going to leave this with a couple of invitations. I will make sure that you get an invitation as faculty to talk at the next Sri Lankan Association of Neurologists conference, which should be February next year. You will be visiting them virtually. I think you can move and shake several of them to get some good things because they need a little bit of help. It's a country with, you have enough Sri Lankan expats in New Zealand. I'm sure you would have met many of them as patients and colleagues also. They are doing very well in New Zealand. That's what I have witnessed. But they need a lot of support back in Sri Lanka too. They got about 23 million people and about 40 neurologists, about 10 or 12 of them trained with me here. And I would still like them to do a little bit more. Again, they have a great history. And I think you virtually visiting there and sharing your powerful story would inspire a couple of people to move further, and establishing a connection always help both parties eventually. So that's the first invitation. Second invitation is wherever possible, we would like to get you involved with some of the WFN activities also, because in this global journey, we need a lot of movers and shakers to definitely foster quality neurology and promote better brain health, irrespective of the background or country or the language that people speak. At the end of the day, when our brains get sick, it's a basic human brain sickness. We don't get English sadness or non-English sadness. It's just pure human sadness. Same with depression and rest of the other things. So solutions must be the same somehow. So as a matter of token of appreciation, given that you have told me that you are enjoying cooking, I'll make sure that as soon as possible, I'll get you a nice cookbook written by one of the famous Sri Lankan chefs that I really adore, written in English, so that you can try them. Anything else that you would like to say before I conclude this session for the global community, neurologists, neurology trainees, and other colleagues who will play their part in this journey of continue to foster quality neurology and better brain health globally? What is your take-home message to them?
Well, I would like to thank you for speaking with me. I think that the idea of bringing people together is absolutely essential, and I think it is what humans, when humans are at their best, when they work together, connecting, sharing experiences, learning from one another, helping one another, and seeing how we all have so much in common. We're all a little bit different, and we need to respect that, and we need to learn from that and take advantage of it, actually, because I think the diversity that we bring to these global efforts is absolutely an asset for achieving great things, because we, coming from one perspective, you can never achieve as much as having many, many different perspectives, many, many different cultures and backgrounds come together. And so I'm very excited about being a bit more involved with the World Federation of Neurologists, and I completely echo your call for action, for all of us to work together, to respect each other and to value each other and see what we can learn and achieve together. And in this time where we have these unprecedented challenges facing our planet, both in the form of the pandemic and climate change, I think it is more important than ever that we do what we can to work together to achieve all sorts of important things that will ensure our long-term survival and flourishing, to prepare having a wonderful, healthy world that's equitably cared for is something I'm incredibly passionate about.
Completely agree. And I tweeted as we finished off the World Congress Neurology yesterday evening, saying that now that we have done this, let's get on with our next task, individually preventing every single COVID-19 infection that we can prevent by sticking to what we learned over the last 2 years, and promoting every single person that we can push towards vaccination, because vaccination is the only way that we can see some light at the end of the tunnel. It's with the boundless kindness, compassion, and one person at a time, changing them for better is the only way that we are going to come out. And we are not out of woods yet, as you and me both know. We just have to relentlessly work together as kindly as possible and as compassionately as possible, as patiently as possible. With that, let me conclude this and please convey my sincere apologies for John, and tell him that my partner in crime pay the same price in every holiday that we take. She knows that it's 24/7, and every time when I finish off a task, when her friends tell her that, oh, you would have this back now. Oh, no, he would start with his next project, and I just need to find time to support him. Take care and stay well, and we wish you very best, and stay in good health, and we look forward to seeing you face to face one of these days once this crisis is over.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.